Our Lady of the Angels Fire of 1958, a fire that destroyed 95 lives but saved thousands of others. In this first picture, we have a priest blessing the deceased body of a child that did not survive the fire. Whether it was smoke inhalation or first, second, or third-degree fire burns, this child was part of a really big turning point in history. This picture, you can tell the tragic and sad environment that this fire caused. Just look at the firemen's faces. They look so sad. I would feel sad too if I was holding the dead body of a child. But hey, firemen are used to this, right? So they go through this type of stuff every single day. But for some reason, I strongly believe that this fire was very, very different. This child was one of the many bodies these firemen saw. In the back of the priest, you can see a young man holding back someone or trying to get inside their school. Whether it was either of those reasons I mentioned, you can see the look of desperation and worriment in his face. And I mean honestly, who wouldn't have that look on their face at that time? All the thoughts of whether your child survived the burning inferno, or if you're going to have to start planning your child's funeral instead of your child's next birthday, is a really messed up thought for any parent to have in their entire lifetime, in my opinion. This picture represents all the students that were killed in this tragic fire. Notice how all the kids' faces vary of age. Students from kindergarten to 8th grade were smothered by the broken pieces of the collapsing roof and walls. These kids didn't even live to see another day of their life. They didn't live to see their graduation, their next birthday, or Christmas. It's tragic. These kids had a long way to go in their life, and they didn't live to see this because they didn't have the materials of preparation in case of a fire. It brings me back to my point. This tragic fire helped save thousands of lives. It helped us see what type of consequences we could face if we are not prepared for any type of dangerous situation like this. It makes me think, would you rather spend a few $100s here and there to fund fire extinguishers and fire alarms for our school, or spend those hundreds of dollars repairing a funeral for deaths we could have prevented? Think about it. In this picture, we have an old man selling newspapers. The headline, it reads, "School burns, fears 75 dead." There wasn't even 75 children dead. There was 92 children dead and 3 nuns, bringing the total to 95 dead people that day. 95 deaths we could have prevented. I've never seen anything more sad on the newspaper than this. You can see the face expressions of the people behind the men. They look speechless. I went around asking my family members how they would feel if they were to ever read something like this. Let's just say that their face expressions were the same ones that these public figures had. That headline was in many newspapers nationwide. California to New York to West Virginia to Washington, D.C. It was something along those lines that caught many attention seekers. This fire made story around the world, and it's clear why it made the headlines it did. It was one of the worst tragedies to occur ever in a school that could have been prevented. This picture speaks for itself. The funerals for nearly 27 victims were held in the National Guard Armory, seeing as there was not enough room in many churches to hold many coffins or mourners. This mass funeral was held on December 5th, 1958, 4 days after the devastating inferno. The first 3 rows in the front of the coffins are all family members of the 27 children. The rest are neighbors, classmates, friends, teachers, and public that are just paying their respect. But this picture comes to show you how one event can bring hundreds of people together to pay respect for maybe someone they never knew even existed. Tough times bring our nation and society together. You can see that some of the coffins are very small and some are really big, but all of the coffins are white. None are brown or black or any other color in particular. They are all white. Why? Because everyone knew that these innocent and pure angels did not deserve to die the way they did. Their lives could have been spared if there was enough preparation and fire safety materials. This picture was the cover of many newspapers nationwide. The first 3 cars have the bodies of the 3 deceased nuns that died trying to rescue their students. The bravery these nuns had to save the bits of students they could have saved is amazing. They gave up their lives to save their students. That's amazing that they would risk their lives for innocent children instead of their own. It comes to show you that these nuns were really heaven sent. That's why when they were buried, they were all buried in white, because it represented their purity and innocence. All of these children and none had. They didn't deserve to die. They deserved to live. In this picture, we had 2 archbishops who were directors at the cemetery where 27 of the dead children were buried. Many priests, bishops, and archbishops were called from surrounding areas. There were so many deaths that a couple of priests here and there weren't enough to bless all the deceased bodies. This photo was taken at the innocent victims section of the cemetery of Mount Carmel. Just imagine what was going on in these priests' minds. I mean, they deal with this type of stuff every day, but still, the life of these children that was cut short is still pretty sad. Maybe these priests knew these children from Sunday masses or religious ceremonies like weddings or baptisms. Or maybe I could be wrong. But still, the death of these young children was pretty harsh for anyone to take in at such little time. This young lady right here is Frances Pano. She was a survivor. But just look at her face. She appears so lost and dazed, as if she doesn't even know where she is or who she is. Her emotional trauma is noticeable from hundreds of miles away. She watched her classmates die in front of her own very eyes. Perhaps she even saw siblings or family members die in front of her eyes. That's a traumatic memory for any child or person to experience in their life. But yet, half of these children still managed to go to schools at nearby because they had to continue their studies. These children probably couldn't concentrate, thinking that the school might set on fire too. And maybe this time they wouldn't get so lucky and they might not make it out alive. The children had no counselors there for them to talk, so they basically had to deal with their trauma and troubles by themselves because there was nobody there to guide them through. Here we have a picture of firemen and policemen who are helping carry out the perished bodies of students. It is believed that many students' bodies were badly burned and injured, that some of them had to be carried out in sheets or bags because they just seemed to fall apart whenever they were tried to be carried out. Can you imagine the traumatic and disturbing images some of these firemen had? I'm pretty sure that none of them could fall asleep easily. Sometimes I can't even fall asleep if I see a dead rat or a dead bird in the middle of the street or something around that area. But these firemen saw severely damaged bodies, and some just saw some of those bodies fall apart in their own arms, and yet they still managed to go to work and continue working. I seriously applaud the bravery that these firemen had. I really do. Here we have a drawing that was done by a Lifetime magazine artist when they did an issue on the Ola fire. They interviewed many kids and nuns. They gathered many interpretations from each and every student they possibly could. In this interpretation, the room 208 is represented. In room 208, 11 students died, and their teachers also died. According to the artist, the student, whose name still remains unknown, is describing how 3 students have already died of smoke inhalation, and the rest are fighting by the windows for air. Notice how many students just seem to pull each other away from the windows. The desperation got the best of each and every one of them, and that's why 11 students couldn't survive. They all just tried to escape the burning flames, but half of them couldn't do it. They didn't make it. And even when jumping out of the windows, some of them got severely injured, whether they hit the fence or a rock or the concrete. They died of head trauma or other things. Desperation did get the best of them. And I mean, I understand. I wouldn't be able to keep calm in a room that's burning while I'm like 10 feet away from the ground. I understand them. I really do. Every time you try to look up the Our Lady of the Angels fire, this will be the first picture that comes out. Here we have a fireman carrying out the very first victim out of the fire. The victim's name is John. He was in room 205 during the incident, and his lifeless body was found near the window. Everyone's guess? Little John was trying to make it out of the fire, but all the smoke and debris falling on him caused his little lungs to fail, which led to his death. This picture was taken by a local photographer working for a local newspaper, but yet it made headlines all over the world. Seeing as how this was the very first picture of a victim coming out, they decided to make this photograph the defining image of this tragedy. Every time I try to look at this picture, I admit it breaks my heart just looking at the lifeless body that probably had a bright future ahead of him. It makes me sad. I look at it and I think to myself, maybe if they had working fire alarms or working fire smoke detectors, fire extinguishers, or sprinklers atop of every class, this fire could have been prevented, and all of those children could have gotten far in life. But it wasn't like that. But yet, it is thanks to this event that our schools in Chicago and nationwide have all the fire alarms and fire prevention kits they have. This is why I believe that this was a big turning point in Chicago. Not only did it provide us with a future of great sophisticated equipment, but it also provided us with a slight sense of peace that something like the incident that occurred on December 1st, 1958 in the Our Lady of the Angels will never ever happen again in Chicago or in any other state.